listener production.
The creators of this podcast would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which it is recorded. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the first storytellers of this land. We pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, as well as any Indigenous people who may be listening today.
Hello and welcome to Two Guys, One Earth, a cricket-adjacent podcast that I am doing during the World Test Championship and the Ashes series in England. And I'm very happy to have today's guest. This is our mid-series episode. Normally we've been recording just before the Test match or immediately after the Test match because of the 9-day gap between the third test and the fourth test. It's very nice to be able to have this opportunity to reflect on what has come before, but also look forward to the rest of the series. At the moment, Australia 2-1 up in the Ashes. Very exciting. And a man who was over there to see it in person joins me for today's episode. It is the amazing Peter Helliar. Thank you for joining me on the podcast, Pete.
Great to be here, Will. And can I just say, 9 days, it's too long, and it actually feels much longer than that. And we're not even at the 9th day yet. Like, it feels like a month ago that the last test was played.
I understand what you mean. And by the way, I've just realised the irony because poor old Pete, this morning you couldn't find an adapter for your microphone. And we literally were going to do this while you were in the UK, but you didn't have a microphone with you. And now I realise we waited for you to get back to Australia and we still haven't got a microphone. So we could have actually really got a hot, fresh take straight from the UK. But the good news is that I agree with you. Like, because these tours, they used to be 3 months long and you'd play all these side games and it felt like we were over there forever. This one is so condensed, particularly that second and third test that essentially went back to back. 9 days now feels, what used to be a standard thing now feels like forever, doesn't it?
I cannot believe how it feels like it. And I guess it's, the upshot is that we're invested and we love it, so it can't come quick enough. But it genuinely feels like weeks ago, like close to a month ago that last test played out. So, yeah, I can't wait. I'm
glad, though, that for the series, and now I'm talking more because as an Australian, I'd love us to see, win us 5-0 and, of course, but as someone who loves Test match cricket and has seen this for being an incredible competition between two very different teams playing in very different ways, and it's been absolutely fascinating. And I feel like 2-1 is a pretty accurate scoreline out of the 3 tests that have been played so far. But it also reminds me, with this 9-day break, that if Australia had won the series at 3-0, I reckon we would have just forgotten about it by now. Like, it would have been over. We would have been like, that's done. What's on now? Yeah. The World Cup soccer. We're watching that now.
Yeah. It's funny you say. I mean, I think a lot of us would have had that thought of it's good for the series that England won, and you're right. I think it's a pretty fair reflection. Although, if England win this next one, and Australia are in trouble, on day 3 of the 5th test, watch us pray for rain. For the last 2 days of that 5th test. So, yeah, it's good for cricket right now, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah, totally. This is the time where we can talk about things being good for cricket when you're comfortably 2-1 up still. But okay, so here's what I'm going to ask you. You went over to the UK. You went and actually watched some cricket when you were there. So talk us through what that experience was like.
Yeah, it was pretty great. So, I went to Lords when I was 18. I was by myself traveling and just got like a scalper's kind of ticket outside the ground. And it was England versus South Africa. It was actually it was South Africa's first game kind of back into the cricket community. It was an infamous day where Mike Atherton did a bit of ball tampering. For memory, I don't think he served a year suspension for memory. No, in fact, he did not serve a year. In fact, he barely got a tap over the knuckles. But he
I mean, look, that was against South Africa. Our ball tampering was against South Africa. I'm starting to think it's South Africa's fault.
Yeah.
I think there's something about South Africa that makes people want to tamper with the balls.
Where there is smoke, there is fire, and I completely agree. But that was a great experience, and then 18 years later to go and take my 18-year-old son, Aiden, to the game. Day one at Lord's, Australia versus England was pretty special, and I was blown away by this little. I'm not sure have you been to Lord's?
Never. No, I've never watched cricket in England. Like, one of my great dreams back in the day, you know how sometimes when you're young, like you have these you're like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. This is like my bucket list. And then just somewhere in living your life, you just kind of forget about something you used to hold so precious. And it's only since I've been way back into test match cricket again that I've rediscovered this idea that maybe, because one of my big dreams was to go and watch test match cricket in all the places where they play test match cricket. That was just one of those things I wanted to do in my life, was visit all the countries, and I've done fuck all of that. Like,
you've been to the G, you've been to the Gabba.
I haven't even seen it played in Hobart. I haven't even been to all the states in Australia to watch test match cricket.
I can say that I have, and Bellerive is a bloody good place to watch test cricket. You'll have a great day down there. It's the only ground that I've been to where literally outside on the nearest street corner you can buy horse manure. That was surprising. I didn't buy any, but the fact that it was being sold and available was surprising.
Well, I mean, some people, they go to the cricket for the day, and then when they get home, they want to, fertilise the garden. Yeah, that's okay.
That's it.
It's a big day out. So no, I haven't. I would love to, and in fact, I'm hoping that the momentum of this podcast will catch on so much that by next time the Ashes comes around, I'll be able to leverage it into some opportunity to travel overseas and go to all the matches and do the podcast from over there. So that's my long-term planning that I've put in place to have this experience. But no, I've never been before, so tell me everything.
So one of the surprising things, which I don't think I knew 18 years ago, I'm not sure if it's changed. I imagine it probably hasn't, but you can take into the ground at Lord's, the home of cricket, 2 cans of beer each, or a bottle of wine or champagne.
A bottle? Of wine?
A bottle.
A glass bottle of wine.
Yes. So you have everyone around you just popping corks and opening their wine, and it's just like, it's crazy. It's crazy stuff. Like, you can just not imagine that happening anywhere in Australia now. And it just seems...
Well, the problem is that we can't be trusted as Australians, right? That's the problem. They used to let us take alcohol of our own to the games, and then people would take 8 slabs and drink them all, and then just just start chucking them at people.
Yeah.
We can't be trusted to take a bottle of wine. We let people take 1 bottle of wine. Someone gets glassed at the first game.
Yeah, I reckon probably after the 7th stabbing in Bay 13, they probably went, okay, no more yellow into the grounds. Okay. No more bottles of yellow. Come on, you've had your fun.
You know that if people were able to take champagne in, there would be supporters by the fence popping corks at players while they're trying to kick goals, right?
You're absolutely right, and yeah. And when you say there was a glassing, that would be a player. It wouldn't be anyone in the crowd. It'd be Stuart Broad. Stuart Broad would not be alive today if that rule existed in Australia, with no doubt.
Okay, so you can take in 2 cans or a bottle of wine, a bottle of champagne.
Yeah, that's all I've got to say, really. I mean, it was no. It's you walk down, and there's a real atmosphere. I love the walk from Jollymont, to the G as well on a big day, and the Ashes is like no other. For me, watching the Ashes is like watching kind of almost any AFL final. Each day of it feels like a final. It's like no other. I watch the Ashes like I watch no other Test cricket.
What and why is that, do you think? I think that's part of what we've been talking about on this show is this, like, why is it so special, do you think? What's at the heart of that for you?
It really just feels important still. Like, it feels, it's like, it's imagine if Collingwood, I'm a tragic Collingwood supporter, and they've delivered me quite a bit of heartbreak over the years. It's like watching Collingwood play Carlton, our arch nemesis, our arch rival, in a final each time. It kind of feels like if we lose this, we're going to hear about it for a long time. So, and they just have, the Ashes has this innate ability to be dramatic, like no other series sees. I mean, maybe it's because we're so invested that we the drama's amplified. Perhaps maybe this drama is in every Test match and we just don't focus on it or we miss it. But it just, I mean, I love the fact that all these, the fifth day is usually in play in the Ashes series. And there are villains and heroes and twists and turns throughout the whole thing. And, yeah, I mean, it is the old enemy. But I even when Ben Stokes, tore our hearts out a couple of years ago, I stayed up and watched all of that. And at the end of it, as much as it hurt to lose and for, Nathan Lyon not to take that ball and get that stump off, at the end of the day, you had to kind of go, you know what, I've just seen one of the great Test innings, and I'm still bloody stoked that I stayed up for it. So there's this, it's never over until that final wicket gets taken, and I can understand if people don't like Test cricket, but I feel for them. I feel a bit sorry for them, because it's like if you get it, you get it, and it's my mother-in-law goes on about I can't stand the Test cricket. They take so long to make runs, but it's just I get gripped by every ball because every ball is an opportunity for the game to get spun on its head.
And I think that what you said about the idea, does every Test have these twists and turns, or are we more invested in this and we notice it more? I think it's probably a bit of both, but I do think that Test cricket, because, and this is what I love about it as well, so much of it is psychological. Like in a lot of other games that are played, like, particularly sports that we follow, and you and I are both, fans of AFL, and there's a lot of very split-second decision-making, but it is almost constant. It is constantly moving split-second decision-making. So, like, a lot of the thinking that you're doing isn't very long-term. It is very short-term in, like, what is going on, right? Like, you're very much in that active mind, whereas in cricket, there might be several plans that are happening all at once, some of them that are meant to take longer or shorter, a person against a person, a team against a team, a way to combat, and there's this real push and pull, which I think this series, there's been a lot of push and pull. We're seeing two different teams playing in two different ways, and they've both had successes and failures in the individual battles in between. And if you understand those battles, like if you're invested in, if you know David Warner's record against Stuart Broad, it means more than when Stuart Broad comes on to bowl to David Warner. You've got to understand a little bit of the storylines to fully appreciate the game.
And that was, to be honest, at the day that I went on day one at the Lords, that was the storyline. It was, okay, England wins the toss with cloud overhead looking like, and like the English around me, they were pretty cocky. Like they knew it was a good toss to win. We knew it was a bad toss to lose, and they were up and about. And knowing that Davey Warner was going to be facing Stuart Broad as soon as they got the climate protester off the ground, which, by the way, I know Johnny Bairstow's done a bit of been in the headlines for other reasons since then, but full credit for his performance on that day to carry a protester off the ground. I was there to see it, and he literally carried him from basically square leg to over the fence. It was remarkable. Like one arm.
I mean, it really proved, if the ball was the size of a human, he'd be able to catch it.
he hung on to him the whole way to the boundary too. Maybe he dropped him a couple of times. I don't know, but at least he went for it. Yes, it was, and that was certainly the storyline. And Davey Warner dug in, and he made, I think he got into the 80s for memory. So that exactly what you say. Knowing that storyline and knowing that, I was, to be absolutely honest, and no offense, I guess. No offense to Davey Warner, I'm a big fan of.
It'd be weird if he was listening.
No, they're cricket nuffies, all of them. I mean, Steve Smith would be listening, no doubt. He would be. He'll have this on in his hotel room as he's practicing cover drives, no doubt, with his pads on. But I was kind of expecting, Davey to go, and it was actually Uzi who went out first, and then he dug in, and the ball was moving around, but yeah, you're exactly right. Knowing that storyline makes it all the more rewarding.
So other impressions of your day at the game?
It was, you always, it's fun to see like the hill they talk about on the ground, the slope.
Yes.
It's just,
so for people who don't understand or didn't listen to the episode about that, this is one of these classic cricket things that other people don't understand. I was at the AFL football the other night, and there was some people behind me at the game who'd brought someone, I think, from Canada, and they were trying to explain the rules. And one of the ones that the Canadian could not get their head around was the idea that there was no standard size for the AFL grounds, that from game to game they could be played on different shaped ovals. And it's also one of the things I love about cricket is there's no standardized size for a cricket oval. And Lords in particular, they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, at one end if you're bowling you have to run uphill.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're never gonna fix that. We're just gonna leave that as part of the design of the ground.
I know you're not sure if Stuart Broad's going to run over, or you're going to see Julie Andrews. It's quite remarkable. But I love the characters that it brings character to the ground. The grounds have character, so it's not just. I know there's a lot of character that goes on in stadium, in the off the pitch, and in crowds around the world for different sports. But I love the different grounds, and there's so much nuance to do with the pitch, in cricket, and the way that the way it will deteriorate over the 5 days, and that's what I think Americans, people not don't know the sport, don't understand about 5. It's not the same day. It's not the same conditions 5 days in a row. Like you're playing on a pitch that is dying, so every day's a bit different. But it's also, I was literally sitting back row, mid wicket, literally had the stand, the wall of the stand behind me with my son, and it's a very different back row than the MCG. Like you still feel very close to the action. The Gabba's a great ground to watch. Cricket at, I think, as well, because you feel pretty close, as you do, I think, at the SCG as well, and obviously Belrive. But, you still felt very close to the ground and to the players, so that was great. And I will say it was a pretty quiet crowd. Like, I think next time I go over to do your podcast over there, the HO are listening, it's all work. I'd love to go, maybe to Manchester or one of the other tests, because it's I've done Lords twice now, and I'd happily go again. But I would hate it to be my sole experience, because I'd love to experience a bit of a rowdier crowd. They're pretty well behaved. In fact, there was a couple of times where it was eerily quiet, to be honest, and that was probably when they were realising that they weren't. Getting the wickets that they'd come to see. But, it was quite quiet.
So were you still in the UK for the fallout of the second test?
No. So I had I was literally in a jungle when these tickets were got for me, doing I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. So I had no contact, and my brother and my wife kind of teamed up when the late last ballot came out for tickets, and secured us 2 tickets, and And my wife was planning our trip, so she said, "Okay, he's going to day one. We'll leave the next day and go to Paris." So I was on the Eurail to Paris the next day for day two. And what, funnily enough, Kathy Lett, who obviously you know Will, and Australian writer, she famously wrote Puberty Blues, one of the great Australian kind of pieces of entertainment. A great book. And she came to see our show. Me and Tom Gleeson did shows in Soho Theatre, which were a lot of fun.
That was the reason for your trip, of course, ATO.
If you're listening, that's it. That's the reason. We also went to Barcelona and Rome, and and she, unaware that we're going. We were already in Paris because Tom also came to Paris. He stayed for day two because Kathy got him a ticket for day two. Then he joined us on day three. So we had a few days in Paris hanging out, our families. And Kathy emailed us saying, "I've got one ticket for day 5. You guys can fight over it." And we had to kind of write back saying, "Oh, thanks so much, Kathy, but we're in Paris." And in Kathy's original email, she said, I've got a spare ticket, it's with Steve, and, I'm sure you guys will get along. And it wasn't until I'd sent my email back that I realised she was talking about Stephen Fry.
Isn't he like chairman or president of the MCC or something like that?
He is the president of the MCC. And so to this day, and obviously it's about, only a few weeks later, I don't know if I missed a great opportunity or evaded a tense situation. Like would that day 5 and Stumpgate been a fun way to watch with the president of the MCC and comic icon and hero of mine, Stephen Fry, or would it have been, would I have been targeted by Stephen and those around him, because it was a pretty tense situation.
I mean, I would have loved if just through some twist of fate, you see those scenes out of the long room at Lord's on the final day with the Australians being heckled by the crowd, and and just in the background is Strawny and the Australian fast bowler.
It would have been very funny if we were sitting there with Stephen in his box and just like heads down, just being screamed at by Stephen Fry, Hugh Laurie, and Ben Elton.
And in Paris, was there much talk of the Australia versus England result in the Ashes? Was it the talk of Paris?
They were so outraged. They took to the streets and started looting. I mean, I wasn't across all the news. I'm not sure. It might have been for other reasons, but it was funny because I was in Barcelona for the first test, and it's not a fun way to try to enjoy cricket. Basically, walking to your dinner through the streets of Barcelona with your family, refreshing your feed, trying to find out if Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyons have come on ball and made a couple of runs. So that was the way I experienced the first test.
Okay, so obviously coming up to the fourth test, there's been a lot of speculation around what Australia's best team might be. And of course, we love to add to the noise here on this podcast and just randomly speculate about who should be in and out of the team based on absolutely no knowledge at all.
Yeah.
So obviously the key decisions the Aussies seem to need to make is like Mitch Marsh seems undroppable based on the third test. Does that mean that Cameron Green comes back? If Cameron Green comes back, who does he come back in replacement for? Is there room in the side for Michael Nessa maybe if we want a different option?
And there's somebody else. There's somebody else you're leaving out too.
And there's someone else I'm leaving out too.
You're leaving out Glen Maxwell.
Oh, yeah.
You are leaving out Glen Maxwell.
Of course I am.
The
because
Big Show.
I wasn't even aware the Big Show was back playing cricket. last I heard, he'd done himself an injury playing beer pong at a birthday party and he was out of the Indian tour. I didn't realise he was available for selection.
Yeah, well, he's over there and putting some good form together. And I don't know, like, okay, so nothing against young Murphy. He's 22.
Yeah.
He's going to play a lot of cricket for Australia. And if he plays, which let's face it, he probably will.
If he plays, they've got to be confident that they're going to bowl him.
Yes.
That's all I would say. Is like if they're not confident enough to bowl him in pressure situations, then they shouldn't play him.
Yeah, and I would bring Nessa in, and I would play. I think Cam Green comes back in, but I think you can't. I agree, you can't drop Mitch Marsh. So, I mean, if you're England, you'd be absolutely stoked, no pun intended, that if Mitch Marsh gets dropped, you know, like that's the way I think about it. If I'm the opposition, do I want Mitch Marsh playing? No, I don't think I do. I wonder, like, do they play Warner? Can somebody else open? Can Trav Head open? Can Mitch Marsh open? You know, it's one thing about cricket that I'd never completely understand with positions of you know, like, and I played a bit of cricket growing up, but my brother played a lot more cricket and knows a lot more about cricket than I do, as does my dad. But I never kind of quite get the whole thing about batting positions. And he's got to play 5, he's got to play 6, he's got to play 3. It's like, just learn. They've all learned how to bat. So, you know, like Labuschagne.
The argument being that, you know, they're different. Like, I think the main one being tempo of play used to be part of it, right? Like that, you know, your openers could afford to be a bit slower than your middle order batsmen for building an innings, that sort of thing. But I think a lot of it is to do with how you are against the various types of ball, right? Are you good against the vulnerable against the new ball, like the shiny ball? But the argument that would be made to that about if you were going to say Green or Marsh might open, they both have opened in short form cricket. And at 5 or 6, you're normally getting the second new ball anyway. So it's not like you're unused to playing against a new ball.
Yes.
But it is also the thing about elevating a first drop, a Labuschagne, or like we've done this before with, you know, Khawaja becoming an opener. Like, I agree with you. Like, if we lose 2 quick wickets, you're in against the new ball regardless.
You could literally, Labuschagne could literally be facing the second ball of the day.
Yeah. So can it really make that much of a difference if he faces
Now, ideally, of course, Labuschagne would like to come in when the ball's a bit battered, you know, and there's a century on the board. But like, there's every chance that's not going to happen. So I think if they decide, like, people were wondering, okay, well, who you know, does Marcus Harris come in? But I don't think you need that. I think I just think you play somebody within the team. And
I don't think we're trying to solve the problem of Warner. I honestly don't. I think this conversation, because Warner's actually done fine. Like, he was terrible in the last test, but so far he's actually done absolutely fine.
I agree.
Like, for what his job is. And this conversation is less relevant about Warner now than it was a month ago. Like, I actually think he's like in better position to hold his position in the team than he was a month ago coming into these things, if that makes any weird sense, right? Like, I think he's done enough. This is about us not wanting to drop Mitch Marsh, first and foremost, and us wanting to bring back in Cam Green. And then suddenly we're like, oh, Nessa made like 176 in a match and he'll probably move it around a bit. And you know what? The big show, Glen Maxwell, we could bat 11 guys. Like, it's suddenly about all these possibilities versus what's already there. I don't think we're trying to solve the Warner problem, which is why I don't think Harris or Renshaw are the answer. It's about whether we're going to gain something else by picking a player who isn't Warner, right?
Completely agree. And the idea of bringing Nessa in, I like. I mean, we get so excited when we think there's like the solution's on the horizon, and it's just appeared. Because you go, well, Boland hasn't been as effective, so you can understand if they decide to bring Stewie Boland out.
I mean, the thing about Boland, I think, the Boland has a thing that he does very well. They've come up with a good way to counteract that. Like, that's all that's happened. It doesn't mean Boland's not like a good bowler anymore. He's lost. Like, I mean, he bowled us to the World Test Championships. Like his greatest strength is putting the ball on the exact same spot over and over, and just like and they've just decided our plan to that is we're going to run down the pitch and smash you all over the joint. And at the moment, it's working as a plan against him. So I don't think he can play. You've either got to pick Hazelwood or like another bowler.
Well, exactly right. And you always forget. We've almost forgotten about Hazelwood. You know, in the excitement about Nessa coming in, you know, in a way we've forgotten about Josh Hazelwood, who's obviously a very good bowler. You know, one of the better bowlers in the world. But I like the idea of bringing Nessa in because he can bat. And Josh is, you know, not hopeless with a bat, but you know, Nessa is a better bat. So I don't know, just giving England something else to think about. I like.
What if we open with Glen Maxwell? We pick Glen Maxwell and he opens the batting.
Kawaja Maxwell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Labuschagne.
Like, give him license to go out and, like, you know, smash it wherever he wants to smash it. Right-hander, left-hander. Labuschagne and Smith in next.
Yeah.
And then Mitch Marsh,
Cam Green.
Michael Nessa, Alex Carey, Michael Nessa,
Paddy Cummins.
Mitch Marsh, Paddy Cummins. Cummins batting at 10 or 11. I don't know how far down I've got there. How many people have I picked?
We got Glen Maxwell. We got Uzi into
Marnus and Steve Smith.
Then Mitch Marsh. And then Cam Green.
Alex Carey at 7. Michael Nessa at 8. Mitch Marsh at 9. Pat Cummins at 10.
Mitch Marsh has already been in there, and he comes in after. Is he coming?
Oh, sorry. I mean, Mitch Stark at 9. Pat Cummins at 10.
Paddy Cummins at 10 is very exciting. And then, I think bring Warner in at 11. Bring Warner in. That's great.
Oh, Travis Head. Travis
how
Head.
can we forget Travis Head?
Sorry.
People are screaming at us at the moment.
So Cummins is coming. So, yeah, sorry. So Maxwell opens with, this is great. I love this team. Maxwell opens with Uzi. This is great. Right-hander, left-hander. Maxi just like puts Baz ball back in their face.
Yeah.
We got the big show in. Then you got Marnus to steady it up, Steve Smith to like lock it in, Trav Head to come in and bash them everywhere. Mishmash comes in, bashes them everywhere. Cam Smith's there if we need backup. Alex Carey. And then you got Nessa coming in at
8.
What? 8?
Yeah.
Just off 176 in local cricket.
Okay, it might be 9 actually. Actually, it's 9. Yeah. 9. Stark at 10.
Yeah. This is good.
Yeah.
Cummins at 11.
Paddy Cummins at 11 is a very handy bat.
That's a good team.
That tail.
Lock it in. That is the
wag.
best.
That'll wag.
That's, you know what? That is a good team. I would love Australia to go into the next match. That's our team.
Oh, that is amazing. The wag on that tail. That is Rebecca Judd right there. That is.
I mean, that's a good. Why can't
you're joking about the cricketers actually listening to this podcast, but I hope the selectors are listening. I really do, because I think we've solved a lot of issues.
We got a spinner, and between Head and Maxwell, they're our spinners.
Yeah.
We've got 2 all-rounders in Marsh and Green who can do some bowling. So then you've got Stark, like, who's going to bowl his stuff. Nessa, who'll wobble it around a bit. Cummins takes a little bit of workload off him with the backups there.
Yep.
And then you've just got, like, gum batsmen all over the place.
Yep. It's done. That lock that in.
And it doesn't matter if Maxwell doesn't come off at the top of it. Like, it's worth the roll of the dice. You've still got your bat till 11. Oh, Cummins is coming in at 11. You're fine.
And Davey can carry the drinks. You know, like, we'll bring him on. He can. He's still good in the slip cordon. So it's mate.
Yeah. Well, you don't lose anything in the field having Maxwell in the team.
No, not at all. Not at all.
No,
mate. That's exciting. And this can only lead now to disappointment with whatever team they go with.
Yeah.
The only downside to what we have just done is that it's not going to happen, and we're going to be a little bit shitty.
It's absolutely not going to look anything like the team we just picked, which is an awesome cricket team from top to bottom.
Well, Pat Cummins won't vote for it because, you know, as team orientated as he is, I don't think he wants to come in at 11.
Mate, if we pick a team where Pat Cummins comes in at 11, the English won't even play in the game out of fear. I'll be like, you know what? We've seen your team on paper. There's no way we can beat that team. Somehow, Wil Anderson and Peter Helliar have unlocked the perfect Australian cricket team.
We have broken down baseball.
There's no weaknesses in that team. That's a good team.
I mean, if we win, whatever team they go with in this next test. If we win,
if we win or lose, we need to pick this team.
Yeah.
This is the fight. Yeah.
If we lose, we weren't aggressive enough with a team selection. Yeah. And if we win,
we've got a free hit. We pick this team.
Yeah.
Time for the big show.
Yeah. Bring in the big show.
Oh man, I'm into that. Do you have of like the current Australian cricketers? Do you have particular favourites? Is there somebody that you? I mean, obviously, the one that I would like, there's been a bit of talk about this, obviously, in the last, week or so. Gee, we miss not having Nathan Lyon as part of our team, like for the first time in a very long time. Like Lyon is one of those guys that you almost take for granted because he's always there.
Yeah.
And because his performance is more about consistency than it is about those huge games, you just kind of forget that he's just so reliable at just doing his job all the time. And he was so missed in that last game. So he's definitely one for me. But is there any of the current day players who are big favourites of yours?
Yeah, I agree with Nathan Lyon. We do take him for granted. It's funny. Spinners are kind of funny. We had this generational rock star of a leg spinner who was just like nothing we had seen before, and we will never see it.
Stuart McGill.
Stuart McGill. Yeah. About, Stuart McGill. Tim Zura. So that's all I did. Tim Zura. I went to wicket keeping all of a sudden. But anyway,
he bowled leg spin though. Is it Timmy Zura? Yeah, he bowled leg spin and wicket.
There we go. But yeah, and all the other spinners, they kind of work. They all kind of look like you could not get a group of people who look the opposite of Warney. Like they all look like they've finished their shift at Tandy or something. They all. Yeah. So Nathan Lyon, I think for a long time, we thought, he'll just be here for a little while, and then all of a sudden he's played 100 tests and become one of the great off spinners of our
probably Australia's greatest ever off spinner, and certainly one of the greatest of all time, really. Even the Indians, Rohit Sharma said in India that he doesn't think there's been a better overseas bowler to visit India in his time. He's widely respected around the world. His record for a finger spinner in the Australian cricket team, like you said, we've just never loved finger spinners, really.
Yeah.
They always felt like just an inconvenience we had to have up our sleeve, whereas he's incredible. He's hugely missed. The only way we can replace him is with the big show.
It's the only way. And again, young Murphy, your time will come. But you may have to step aside for the big show for this one. But as far as favourites go, I do love Steve Smith. I've been at a few grounds where he's made a ton. He nearly got there on day one at Lords. That would have been a third or fourth time. I've seen him make a ton at the G at Belrive and the Gabba. I love him. I love Uzi. I just think he's. I love his story. Cricket's a funny game, isn't it? Because guys can kind of fall out of favour or they disappear for a bit. And we're pretty quick to write them off sometimes. And I think because if you follow a sport like AFL, you very rarely does a bloke go missing out of the senior team for a year or 2 years and then kind of resurface. So I love.
Even the accidental nature of all that, because I've spoken about this before, but many, many years ago, a long time ago now, I was on a flight to England and ended up sitting next to Usman Khawaja. A whole bunch of cricketers were going over to play, and I was on my way over, and we sat next to each other and ended up talking for, those big, long flights. You end up just having a chat to the person next to you for quite a while, and we got along really well and just sort of kept in touch over the years, just in a very small way, just the occasional check-in sort of thing. But I always I was like, what a nice young man he was. And I always sort of wished him the best and had been a bit sad that it had never quite worked out for reasons that were a bit hard to fathom. But people forget that even this stage of his career, where he's really been the best Australian batsman in the last 18 months, like consistently, it only happened because Travis Head got COVID. Remember that?
Yeah.
Like that was the only reason that Usman played. I'm not sure that any of this would have ever happened if Travis Head hadn't got COVID and not been able to play in that game. We might not have ever seen Usman Khawaja play Test match cricket again. And so I'm just saying that COVID was worth it. Based on that alone.
And it's hard to disagree.
Right?
Yes. And the great thing about it is Travis Head comes back in as well. Like, we don't lose Travis Head because Travis Head is quickly becoming, one of my, he's already one of my favourites in the team. He's a bloody.
I mean, apart from the fact that we left him out of selection like at least 5 minutes ago,
yes,
but
that was an oversight.
Accidentally, that was a real, never to be not selected again.
That was embarrassing, and I hope, I assume you could only edit that out of this podcast, and the masses won't be hearing that oversight.
Just say Travis Head a few times and I'll edit it in.
Yeah, Travis Head. Travis Head at 5. Travis Head.
Yeah,
Travis
good.
Head.
Well,
you got a few options there.
Yeah, we'll put them all in. Put them all in.
But I mean, cricket is all about taking your opportunities. I mean, literally, it is about that. It's the great thing about cricket. It's an individual sport wrapped up in a team sport. We all talk about the Australian team, but when it comes down to it, it's one bloke who stands at the pegs and has to defend or attack and make those split second calls. And at the other end, you have one bloke for the other team who's it's up to him to try to knock the castle over, as they say. And so it's kind of fascinating, I think, cricket like that.
So, Pete, looking forward, like Baz Ball, like what's your vibe on its place in the game? Like are you a fan of? I mean, look, Baz Ball is a thing that people say a lot when they don't actually follow cricket. Like they're playing attacking cricket, and the fact that there have been 3 results so far. The one thing that you could say about this Test series is I don't think there would be 3 clear results if the English didn't play the way that they're playing. The mode in which they play enables results even in games that have had, almost an entire day washed out. So you've got to give them a huge tick for the pace and the vibrancy that they bring to the table. The overall concept of Baz Ball, has it captured your imagination? Is it here to save cricket? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Adam Gilchrist could probably sue over this. I mean, I seem to remember him playing Baz Ball very well for a long time. But the idea that the whole team could get behind this is pretty extraordinary. And you're right, I do love it because it does guarantee a result. I do also love... And I love that Australia has resisted it, but they kind of play this off the field kind of game with it as well. Like they've really worked hard to sell the idea of Baz Ball, almost willing the Australians on to play it back. And I think it's been pretty disciplined, I think. Particularly someone like Davey Warner, who doesn't mind going after it. He's like that innings at Lords. I thought was a really disciplined innings. Sometimes he can kind of go after that wide ball early, but he was a bit more disciplined. So I love not just what it's brought on the field, but also the theatrics off the field and the mind games that are being played in press conferences to try to get the Aussies to kind of meet them halfway. It's like, no, well, we know how to play cricket. We're very good at that. We're the World Test champions right now, and you're not. In fact, we didn't even play you to become the world champions. There was another team between us and you.
So I'm very interested to see how the rest of this plays out. There's a lot of people saying that maybe the momentum's with the English now. I think the momentum has swung wildly from day to day and often during the days for the entire Test match. Our friend Justin Hamilton, who's not a huge cricket fan, has been getting a daily update from me, which normally is like, who's in front? Because I can't work it out. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's generally been the vibe from day to day. It's been a bit hard to tell who's in front at most times. And just when you think one team's got the best of it, there's been these moments where it's swung wildly the other way. I think the Australians personally are going to be good for the nine-day break, because I think what people forget is not only has this test series been incredibly condensed, but as you said, we played the World Test Championship, this thing that we'd been working towards for 2 years. We play that first, then we roll into 3 tests against the English. I feel like this 9 days off, I think it's good for the Australians. Like the fact that we only have 2 more to get the job done now, I think that is a good thing. Anyway, that is what I'm choosing to believe. Yeah. I think it's good for the Australians.
It's good for 11 Australians, it's just not the other 26 million of us who have to wait those 9 days. But for those 11, yes, who are probably the more important 11, are able to prioritise in terms of cricket. I agree with you, because one, it gives them a chance to rest up a bit and recharge. But it does. It's hard to coming off that kind of very impressive win by an exciting win, and there would have been adrenaline involved, and if there is momentum, it goes both ways. It does have to slow up after 9 days. You can still be feeling good about yourself, but Australians, they would have done the work to also remind themselves that they're in a pretty good position, and that all we need is one more win, hopefully, or a tie. We'll take that as well.
All right, Pete. So we'll wrap this up. Thank you so much for doing this. I really do super appreciate it. What's your prediction for the rest of the season? Let's just it's 2-1 now. How do you think it finishes up?
I think we win the next one, and then the super team comes in. Andrew McDonald listens to the podcast, and he's embarrassed that he hadn't thought of it earlier.
I mean, it makes so much sense once you just write it all down.
Yeah.
It would be one of those things where, there's that famous story about Jonathan Silverman, the single guy. That was the name of his show, wasn't it? The Single Guy. And at the time, it was like a knockoff of Seinfeld, and the Single Guy was going quite well. And he went into I don't know if this is a true story, by the way, but he told it on a talk show, I believe. And it was he went into the boss's office, and he said, I've got an offer for how much I want to get paid per episode. And he got a little piece of paper, and he slid it across the table to the boss of the network. And the boss of the network took out a pen, and he wrote something on the paper and slid it back, and it said, "Weekend at Bernie's 3." So... But I feel like I would like to be in a situation with Andrew McDonald where I just go in and I slide that across the table, and he's like, "You haven't picked Travis Head." And I said, "Well, you didn't in India, but we have added it 4 times. Listen to this tape from Peter Helliar. Cummins is batting 11. This is a super team."
I really hope they. Well, I mean, I do hope they try something. I think I'd love to see at least Nessa come in to this team, and I'd love Mitch Marsh to stay. So whatever has to happen to make that work, they're my hopes and dreams.
Yeah. Well, Peter Helliar, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest on Two Guys, One Urn, my desperate bid to get flown internationally to watch cricket all over the world. I'm just putting it out there. I'm manifesting it. I'd like to go and watch Test match cricket in every country where they play Test match cricket.
Is that too much to ask?
Probably it is too much to ask. Let's be honest.
And the fact is, they play cricket everywhere now. I mean, you go on your Cricket Australia app, and they have all the sporting results. And at the moment, there's a game being played. I think between there's American teams playing.
That's true. There's American. Oh, geez, yeah. See, I could go and get involved in that as well. I could be the next run down sort of cricket reporter. I don't want to be the guys going to the IPL. I want to be the guys going to the American leagues.
Yeah.
Some of the more obscure, leagues all around the world.
Well, I can tell you that.
The Netherlands. They play cricket in the Netherlands,
Absolutely.
Right?
This podcast can do great things for international cricket. I wouldn't have known that the Washington Freedom, 5-1 163 beat the Texas Super Kings, who are bloody hard to beat on their home deck at the Grand Prairie Stadium.
On the Grand Prairie Stadium?
Yeah.
They're playing cricket now, are they?
Yeah. And currently, New York are 5-90 against the Los Angeles Knight Riders. Los Angeles Knight Riders, that's a team.
Well, they'd be the Kolkata Knight Riders because they're all franchises now, like IPL franchises. So
of course, but
that's why they'd be called these names.
I hope the kit comes out.
But you'd hope
You
that
hope.
David Hasselhoff rocks up to games, surely.
They all get driven out by Kit. I would hope.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, that's amazing.
Lap of honour in the back of Kit. Like I'm like, Kit's the mascot. The Kit's the drinks cart. So at the drinks break, they drive out in Kit and start handing out drinks. There we go. Peter Helliar, thank you so much for doing this podcast. Hey, Pete, what can people do some plugs? You've got lots of stuff going on at the moment. Turns out that now that you're not on the project regularly, you've just got about 90 other things that you have been doing. So tell people about what's going on in your life that they can look out for.
Well, you can look out for stand-up really is the main thing at the moment. I'll be just completed shooting Taskmaster for but that'll go to air next year. That was a lot of fun. But so I'm kind of in Adelong and Smithfield this week, and then Hobart and Perth, Geelong, Pakenham, some of the dates off the top of my head that
comedy.com.au, Peter Helliar touring dates. Have a look if you want to go and see Pete do stand-up comedy. And Taskmaster next year, that I'm very excited about that. They had the cast announcement the other day, and what a great collection of people for I'm such a huge fan of Taskmaster as a show. I think it's such a perfect format, and just a fun show to watch. They put it together so well. All the versions. The New Zealand version is currently on Foxtel if you have that, or like Binge or whatever, and it's so delightful and so fun. And am I right in saying they filmed the Australian one at the same Taskmaster house as they filmed the New Zealand one? Was it done overseas? You're not allowed to say.
I cannot confirm or deny, but
you know what? You don't need to say.
If you watch the New Zealand one, you'll notice it looks very similar.
Yeah. Literally, I wasn't trying to give away some big secret. I was using my eyes to observe something. That wasn't me using industry gossip or knowledge. That was just me going, that is definitely the same house they use for the Australian one.
Yeah.
So.
It is. I've got to say, it is an extraordinary amount of fun. And you're right. It's such a fun show to watch. It's unlike kind of any other show that exists. Hence, it's been running for so long in the UK. And a great cast: Aaron Chan, Reece Nicholson, Mel Buddle, Conchetta Caristo, who was great, and obviously the two Toms, Gleeson and Cashman, it was kind of joyous and
it is joyous. It's a joyous show.
Yeah,
like that's the thing that is perfect about this sort of show. Honestly, is that having watched all of it, like I've watched all the UK ones and I've watched like all the New Zealand ones and I watched the Australian first series. I love it. I think it's just such a perfect show, but because no one ever looks bad. It is a show where sometimes the person who wins the series is almost the least entertaining of not necessarily, but the point being that whether you're really good at it or really bad at it, the show rewards either of those things. It is set up perfectly to be a mix of all those things because all the skills in it, none of them matter. It doesn't matter if you're not good at the things, which takes the pressure off. Like rather than getting a comedian on a quiz show where suddenly they don't want to look like an idiot, so they can't be funny anymore. They want to seem like they're smart. The stakes are so low that like it's impressive if somebody works something out, but if they don't, that's also just fun and funny because it doesn't actually really matter in that situation. And it's rare that a show can come up with a format where everyone feels so protected when they're also asking them to feel a bit vulnerable in those moments. Yeah. I think it's so clever. And
you can fail. What you want to do, when you're back at the studio and you're watching your task, is either fail spectacularly or succeed spectacularly. Like
that's right.
It's almost, like
one or the other. Take a bigger risk, right?
Both are great. Yeah. And as comedians, all you're trying to do is really get laughs. But then you start caring about the points a little bit. It's a weird little emotional roller coaster that you end up going on, which I wasn't expecting. But it was a lot of fun. And to be honest, and after doing 10 years of the project, where I get to you kind of get to be funny like 40% of the time, because there's adult stuff that needs to be news needs to be delivered, albeit differently. But it was and kind of somehow being connected to the news cycle. Yeah. It was the perfect thing. I was so excited, when they asked me to be in it, because anything really right now that is silly, that I kind of that doesn't talk about politics or news, I'm kind of bang up for, and it's one of the reasons I went into the jungle and did I'm a Celebrity as well. I was kind of thought that's just, again, it's kind of like family entertainment. It's silly. It's something different. And both were kind of pretty joyous kind of experience.
I can imagine. And this is the other thing I love about Taskmaster that they've got perfect, is that some of the points are so completely arbitrary that, like, even that idea of, like, it's good when the contestants care a bit about the points. If they don't care at all, it actually doesn't add to the momentum of the show. You want some sort of idea that there is a competition involved in it. But at the same time, there is the possibility within their format for points to be so arbitrarily decided that, like, it's great. So it's kind of fair, but doesn't need to be completely fair, which I think is such a great element to what I just love it in a format sense. Like, there's a producer part of my brain that just looks at that show and tries to find something that they've done wrong, and it's so hard to. You feel like every single thing of that show makes sense, and it is there for a reason, even if you don't immediately see what the reason is. It adds to the overall package of the show. It's such a anyway. So it's a great show. I am definitely available to appear on it if they in series 3. I would love to.
I'm sure they would.
I would love to be part of it. I'm not going to the jungle. I'm not eating shit that's still alive, but I would happily go and be bad at some tasks. Peter Helliar, thank you so much. It's always a delight to talk to you, my friend. Michael Michaelis, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no, I love you, mate. And let's go to the Aussies. Let's win this so we get the big show back in.
Listener.